Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Randy Martin, and it's my pleasure to be part of the team that's going to be providing you with continuing coverage of the 59th annual meeting of the American College of Cardiology and the I2 Summit 2010. This is truly the main event for our profession. Thousands of cardiovascular professionals from across the country and around the world have come here to Atlanta for 3 days of science, education, networking, and innovation. And we're going to be bringing it all to you as it happens with same-day coverage. So let me first get started by introducing our distinguished panel of experts, and they are distinguished. To my left, my colleague and friend, Dr. Peter Block. Peter is professor of medicine and cardiology and director of the structural heart program at Emory University Hospital. Next to Peter is Dr. Athena Pappas, who's the director of the echocardiography laboratory at Rhode Island Hospital. And last but not least, is that right, Dr. Tony? Dr. Tony DeMaria, who's professor of medicine at the University of California, San Diego. And as many of you know, Tony is also editor-in-chief of the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, or panelists, distinguished panelists, this is obviously really this meeting is all about late-breaking trials, new developments, and, you know, I'd like to hear from each of you. I'll start with you, Peter. What do you think, what are you really looking forward to this morning, do you think, that might be really a dramatic development?
Well, I think, Randy, that the Everest trial is going to be the big trial of this meeting. We don't have any information really about transcatheter therapies for mitral valve disease, mitral regurgitation particularly. The Everest trial is a randomized 2-to-1 randomization, surgery versus transcatheter mitral clip therapy for very selected patients that have mitral regurgitation. This trial has been going on for 3 years. People have been talking about it. We've got high-risk registry patients we already know about from this trial, and some of those sort of teaser informational things we've learned about this trial already indicate this may be a positive trial. So everyone's looking forward to it. If it turns out that this trial ends up being positive in a way that it is possibly safer than surgery and also has better or equal or maybe not quite so good but acceptable outcomes, I think we've got a blockbuster.
So it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to it. Athena, what are you looking forward to?
A couple of things. I also wanted to comment that I think one of the good things about the Everest that we're going to have is we're going to have Echo Core Lab with surgery, and I think we haven't had that before. So I think it's really exciting.
One of the neat things is that the surgeons are going to get their feet held to the fire for the first time, and we'll have 1 year follow-up for surgery.
What are you looking forward to?
So I think there's a couple other great trials coming out. One is INVEST, where they're looking at diabetic patients, and is there really a threshold for blood pressure? And there's always been a couple of guidelines which have suggested it, but we haven't had good, solid evidence.
You're talking about at what level?
Yeah, how low is too low? Is there really a threshold, or should we push everyone's blood pressure as low as possible that they can tolerate?
Yeah, the ADA has always said that there's no lower limit.
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
So this is good
news.
We
need data
Tony,
for that.
What are you looking forward to?
In the same vein, we know that diabetes is heart disease, and there's a lot of attention, and the ACCORD trials, the 2 ACCORD trials are going to be presented today. And in type 2 diabetics, they're testing the hypothesis that more intense blood pressure lowering will produce a reduction in major adverse events as compared to usual. So reducing the blood pressure less than 120 systolic versus 140. They're also looking at whether more intense lipid lowering will benefit the diabetics. And so they're looking at simvastatin alone versus simvastatin versus fenofibrate. So that we should come out of today knowing exactly how vigorously we should be treating our diabetic patients and whether or not we should really be aiming for even lower goals as regards blood pressure and serum lipids. The other thing, Randy, about the ACCORD trials is that these are co-sponsored by industry and the NIH, huge multi-center trials, and and so I think we're going to see more of these in the future.
Well, that's great. These are all very exciting. Do you see any of these being really dramatic game changers? In other words, change the way we practice? Peter, what do you think?
I think Everest, if it's a positive trial, will be a game changer for selected patients.
In
not
what
for
way?
everybody.
What's it going to do?
I don't think we're going to take a 25-year-old with mitral valve prolapse and put a mitral clip into that patient. I think that would be premature. But I think for the elderly patient, somewhat high risk, has a lot of MR, it probably is a good choice, and it may be a choice. We finally will have a choice, and that's important.
We'll have an idea.
Exactly.
Well, I wonder, though, Peter, the patient with functional mitral regurg and the poor left ventricular function, that's a patient we're desperately looking for some fix for the mitral regurg short of surgery. Now, Everest going to answer that for us?
Everest 2, the randomized trial, did not have those patients in it, but the high-risk registry had 20% of the patients had functional mitral regurgitation.
But very selected.
Of course they're selected.
Yeah.
They're selected for how much line of coaptation and whether you can do this. It gets very technical. But the fact is...
Did he give you an answer?
Functional regurgitation, yes.
He said not quite.
Not quite.
That's
what I thought.
But there will be some.
Well, what about, you both talked about some neat trials with the diabetic patient. I mean, do you think there could be some results that would change our practice?
I think that they could, most importantly because, as we've said, we haven't had the data. We've been suggesting we should get it lower. The INVEST trial is looking at under 130, which is what a lot of people are doing, and we've certainly been doing that. So I think without the data to say how low, we'll have 130 as a goal, a systolic blood pressure goal from INVEST, 120 is a goal, and I think we'll have something besides level of evidence C that we can really work from.
These days, people are not going to die because they get hypotensive. I can't believe somebody with blood pressure of 90 when they stand up isn't going to drop over.
Well, you might not feel good, but you might not die.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that comes out.
Tony?
No, I think it has, the ACCORD study has the potential because I don't think any of us really have been aiming to bring systolic blood pressure below 120 as Athena says. And if in fact those patients do better in regard to MACE and don't have terrible side effects, I think that could be a game changer.
Yeah.
Well, I think all of these are going to be really, really interesting trials. And, the key thing we're going to emphasis on is really to have people have data that they can take home and influence their practice. And so we've seen some really interesting thoughts on what I think are some fascinating trials. So stay with us. We'll be right back.